Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. We have finally made it to the month of September, which means that we have NHL hockey coming on at the end of the season. So it is officially hockey season. So whether you've been an NHL fan your entire life or you're just trying to get into the game, here is everything that you need to know to stay up to date on what's been going on. So the first thing that you probably want to know is, where can I watch NHL games? And the answer is pretty simple. Now, before I really say anything, I just want to say that I am doing this for the love of the game. This is not sponsored. I'm not promoting anybody. This is simply just me saying what I use and my experience. I'm not getting paid for this in any way whatsoever. It is simply for the love of the game, trying to grow it as much as I can. A while back, the NHL signed a deal with ESPN and TNT to have exclusive rights to be able to stream the games and broadcast. So you have your regional, local way of watching the game, and you have your national way of watching the broadcasts. Here is everything that you need to know as far as trying to find an NHL game and where to watch it and what to watch it on. With me being a Blues fan and me living out of market of St. Louis, I personally use ESPN Plus. It pretty much gives me every single NHL game as long as it's not broadcasted on TNT, and I'm able to watch it, no hassle, no problem. And if it just so happens to be on TNT, then I have HBO Max where I can watch those games as well. Now, in order to catch up on where we are to start the season, we have to go all the way back to where the season ended. And that was last year when the Florida Panthers had their rematch against the Edmonton Oilers and inevitably beat them to become Stanley Cup champions once again. This is their second Stanley Cup title, as they have officially gone back-to-back as they beat Edmonton in the previous year, with Sam Bennett winning the Conn Smythe Trophy, which is pretty much the MVP of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, I'm not going to go into free agency signings or any kind of trades or drafts or anything like that, simply just because I do not feel like I'm too qualified for that. There are other guys on YouTube that you can check out that can give you a better breakdown and analysis of players and signings and team standings, all that. I'm just talking about basic knowledge. The NHL signed a new CBA deal, which they implemented all these different rules, which some will be starting this upcoming season, including the playoff salary cap. Now, to get a little off the point here, I'm going to explain in a little bit of a rant of what that means. So basically, each team is required to spend a minimum amount for their roster while also staying below the salary cap of how much they pay their players. Each player contributes to the cap just a little bit in their own different way. Each contract is very different, but in the past several years, it's been a little controversial as certain teams have been circumventing the cap come playoff time, where one of their big paid players ends up going down with an injury, goes on the long-term injury reserve list, to where their cap essentially goes away. They end up trading for a player that also has a big payday coming up, and that player that was injured previously stays on LTIR until playoff time. Where in playoffs, it doesn't matter how much you've spent in the regular season and how much you have to stay under, that now goes away. So you've had certain teams like Exhibit A enter the playoff with a numerous amount of players that circumvent the cap. And this has kind of been like the secret formula for going ahead and winning a cup, as it's been seen in the past couple of years. So now, after the teams have agreed that this is no longer a thing for the upcoming season, you have teams like the reigning Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers who are over the cap and need to figure out a way to deal with that. And probably the biggest news coming out of this CBA deal is that the NHL is moving from 82 games to 84. Now, I personally am not a fan of this. I think 82 games was fine. If anything, Shortening the season is probably a little bit better for the product, but hey, they've been negotiating on this a while. They finally agreed to it. I'm sure we'll be adjusted here in a few years, especially considering we might be expanding probably within the next 5 to 10 years. Now, we talked about the team that won the championship and was given the world's greatest sports trophy. Let's talk about some individual awards. Now, as we talked about the team who won the world's greatest sports trophy, let's talk about some of the individual award winners listed here. You had Connor Hellebuck of the Winnipeg Jets, who just dominated the awards, getting not only the Vezina for the best goalie, but the Hart Trophy, which is given out to the regular season MVP. And then you have Nikita Kucherov, who is slowly but surely building a very impressive Hall of Fame resume, getting the Ted Lindsay and Art Ross trophies this year. Ted Lindsay trophy being given out to the most outstanding player in the league, and the Art Ross for the guy who comes first in scoring. Now, this next segment is more for the newer casual viewers. So if you're a lifelong NHL fan and you have your team, you can go ahead and skip this part of the video. But the question remains, who am I rooting for this year? So when I first got into hockey, I was told that I could do 3 things when it comes to rooting for a team. I can root for the team where I'm from, which happens to be St. Louis, and they had a team, so Blues fan. I could root for the team that I know best, which is usually the recent champions or a big market team like an Original Six, which has a very large hockey market, or even the team that's closest to me. Or 3, I could bandwagon, which at the time was the Chicago Blackhawks, and no, I'm not doing that. No. So essentially, thinking of those 3 factors is what you could decide as far as rooting for your favorite team. We have 32 teams here in this beautiful league, all of which are pretty spread out and have their own regions as far as where they play. But when it comes down to the roots of it, you want to root for a team that excites you, a team that you like to watch. Essentially, each team has its own rhyme or reason as to why everybody is a fan, but it's up to you to decide on who you want to root for and why, because at the end of the day, when people ask why you're a fan, you're the one that has to come up with an answer. Now, segueing back onto my main point, got a bunch of teams this year that could really do it again. You have Florida, who could definitely go for a repeat. You have Edmonton, who could make their 3rd straight final but finally win this year. You have a couple of other different teams like my Blues, the Ottawa Senators, the Washington Capitals, the Carolina Hurricanes, Colorado Avalanche, who could all sneak up and have a good chance of winning this year. But for those of you who are the fans of those Blackhawks, the Predators, the Sharks, your future looks bright, but not at the moment. You might have to wait a little bit. All in all, each year the NHL does its best to bring out a quality product for its fans. Has certain events every year that you can look forward to. Like this year, we will be having our Winter Classic in Miami, Florida. One of the first times ever that they will try and host an outdoor event like that in Florida, while also having the Stadium Series game in Tampa this year, which in my personal opinion, I would have liked to see a Panthers Lightning Winter Classic, but c'est la vie. And if you haven't exactly been in the loop, Utah now has a hockey team. They were formerly the Arizona Coyotes, rest in peace. And last year they infamously went with no name. They were simply just the Utah Hockey Club, which raised eyebrows like mine as to why you would roll out a new team with no name and no plan. Well, they did a little something special, and just like how most teams ended up getting their names, they asked the fans. And if you haven't exactly been in the loop, Utah now has a hockey team. They were formerly the Arizona Coyotes, rest in peace. And last year they infamously went with no name. They were simply just the Utah Hockey Club, which raised eyebrows like mine as to why you would roll out a new team with no name and no plan. Well, they did a little something special, and just like how most teams ended up getting their names, they asked the fans. And it came down to a couple of votes, but it ultimately turned out to be the Utah Mammoth. So now the Utah Mammoth is the official name of the Utah hockey team. Along with some other news, some teams dropped some new jerseys, and a couple of teams like my St. Louis Blues, got a whole different rebrand, so they have a new look. The Chicago Blackhawks ended up debuting their Centennial 100-year anniversary jerseys that they'll be wearing, as did the Boston Bruins. They went with a whole completely different rebrand. They went back to one of their more popular looks and the look that has been iconically made from Happy Gilmore. They changed up the logo. Now the home and away uniforms look like this. And honestly, I'm pretty happy about it. I think it's a good look for them. Moving on to the hometown team, we in fact did a complete rebrand where we not only went with a new logo, but new secondary logos as well. And with the new look, we got new uniforms. So it's actually kind of interesting how the Blues went about this. So we now have a new home and away uniform with the brand, but we are going to be keeping around our old home jerseys, keeping them as a third and using a third of the time throughout the season. And we get to keep our 90s heritage jerseys that you see me wearing here. We're going to have them for 2 games this upcoming season. And as I'm filming this today, the Carolina Hurricanes just dropped a new road uniform. Pretty interesting look over here. I don't know if I'm exactly a fan of this, but it's something different and something that the league could possibly move towards, as wearing colored helmets on the road compared to white has been a little bit more popularized throughout the past couple of years. So it's good to see teams kind of switch it up and be a little bit different. I actually kind of like teams stepping out from the old traditional way of doing things and trying to start something new. I think more teams should do it, and I'd actually be pretty happy with that. Now, as I'm filming this, there are still some jerseys more to come, but unfortunately, until they officially get revealed, unlike Ottawa's, who got debuted today as well, they will have a new third alternative red jersey that they'll be wearing this upcoming season. But all in all, we're going into a season with some great storylines this year. The Penguins' big three, could this be the last year that they all play together? Do they get broken up? Do they retire together? Another probably big storyline coming into the season is, where does McDavid end up? The NHL's golden child, the next prodigy, clearly seems to be upset with his situation in Edmonton. He's sworn up and down that he wants to win a cup in Edmonton, and I do think that that's his goal. But to say that he's not frustrated in his current situation and is probably holding off on signing long term is incredibly evident. And you've already wasted so many years of his prime where he's not going to get those years back. He could end up with an injury, he could start slowing with age, who knows what could happen, and you spent all that time not winning cups. And you've got the 2 best players in the league currently. So it's kind of up and down on whether he signs, but that's something to look out for. But I should also mention Jack Eichel in that conversation too. They're kind of in a deadlock. He left Buffalo, he went to Vegas, won a cup. Does he stay to try and win more? Does he start a legacy somewhere else? Who knows? But again, I don't feel like I'm too qualified to talk about these kind of things. If you do want to go to contract breakdowns and free agency and whatever, there are other channels that I could push you to, but I'm not that guy. Those two just happen to be some of the biggest names in hockey, and it's hard to not talk about those things. How far does Ovechkin go with the scoring record now that he broke Gretzky's record that was deemed impossible to break? Do we have a new villain arc in Vegas with Mitch Marner going from Toronto to Vegas, where on his new team he takes his game to new heights and inevitably lifts the cup over his head? Do we see a new team lift the cup, or will it be a team we've seen in the last 5 to 10 years? All in all though, I am stoked to finally have hockey season back. Now the NFL is king, so fall time does belong to football. But, go Birds. On those days where there is no football, it's nice to kick back and watch some hockey. Comment what you thought. Let me know who your favorite team is. Let me know if there's any storylines I might have missed for this upcoming season. And as always, like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.